Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for those sessions this year, and I hope I can bring them with me into the next year because every one of them I had a certain revelation, and it's like it's amazing. Just one word, one phrase, and you apply it to your knowledge, your experience, and it changes the way you look at things.
There is an admission here. Everybody needs to recite a quote, a joke, or something you would like to share with us, which you think could be appropriate for this session.
I'm working on that.
This is normally the moment where 25% of the participants suddenly leave because they have a phone call or an appointment, but nobody's leaving. This is wonderful. Now, we have moved premises. We're now in a concert hall. And there is a reason for this, because we're going to do a little bit about music. And what is the first thing you always need to do? Well, just listen. So let's make sure that we're all on the same note. So can we just do...
People are divided into categories. Ones believe in unbelievable. Others do impossible. So we are here to do impossible.
And every time we have a guest, and today our guest is Barbara and Michaels. Hello. So you're joining us from New York?
I'm joining from New York. It's 9 a.m. I'm one of the morning people.
Good.
Hello, afternoon people. This is this wild place where the morning people and the afternoon people get to be in the same place at the same time, proving that life is timeless.
So Ben started mapping everything out, and as he began mapping everything out, every reference that came to him seemed to be a theatrical one, which is how it ended up being the immersive theatre learning. But that first iterative process of building the reader's journey gave up, well, I mean, you tell me, Ben, but I thought it gave a really good framework for you to hang each of the chapters from. And it just was, it was an interesting process, but everything that came at me in terms of text around that journey was also very, very fascinating stuff. It's been an absolute joy to work on, to be fair.
But I would like you to introduce yourself as a musical instrument. If you were a musical instrument, what would that be?
I'd be Tibetan bells. I don't know if it'll pick up on the sound, but because it's human voice activated. But I'd be Tibetan bells, because I enjoy being in a centered state, and I think sort of helping others go into that sort of moment of centering. So that would be my sort of my instrument. Yeah.
Thank you. We also have Alain here in the room, Alain Tis. Alain is the one person who's actually bought and read it. No, I'm joking. There are a couple of more people, I think. And you made a comment on LinkedIn that I liked very much. You talked about the Museum of Obsolescence as one of your favorite bits from the book. And you said, well, it's right at the it's right at the end of the book. So why is it right at the end of the book? So this idea gave me the idea to put it first in this learning series, right? The Museum of Obsolescence. So what was your take on it, Anna?
Well, as I said, it resonated quite a lot in the sense that when I started looking at all the different type of schools you kind of had, I was like, yep, been to that one too, been to that one too. You know, and effectively it's a very, I mean, for me it was almost like it was worth putting at the beginning of the book rather than all the way at the end. But that's yeah, editorial choices. But I'm happy I went all the way to the end, because that's actually for me I was like, this is kind of like a nice call to action as well, even though it's not written that way. But it's like, you know, a reminder of, listen, the way we're doing schooling education today isn't necessarily the way we should be doing it. It kind of evolved, and you can backtrack it through history, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And I think it's a really strong chapter to put in there.
Yeah, I would like to be a cello, or I would be a cello, because the way that it has deep tones, I like to go a layer deeper than just the humdrum of life. I like to see where people really have their inspiration, where really people really feel motivated, and why. So yeah, and it's also about resonating. So in the body of the cello, there's a lot of resonating and amplifying, and I like to amplify what is already within the learners.
But for those of you who don't know you, Alain, could you say a little bit about yourself, what you do in life, and how we got to know each other?
Okay, I call myself an experience and transformation architect. Making a very long story short, that means I do two things. I help large organizations transform their customer experience, so an employee experience to a degree, so that they connect better to the humans. And the other part of my favorite part of the job is actually to identify broken experiences and to reimagine them, in which we're currently working on reimagining death care and funerals. And we're also looking at some other areas to basically start from what humans really need, rather than you know, what we kind of shove at ourselves all the time, which is kind of weird. But this conversation we just talked about, you know, about obsolescence and the museum actually fits in there as well.
I am a trumpet, you know, the herald, the brassy. It's that being able to be with people, but also to be able to improvise is what I love.
Now, B, are you a natural stand-up comedian? Are you somebody who always gravitated to the stage? Are you somebody who has always been funny, always been center stage, always been the center of attention?
No, actually, I was not. And I started at about 12 with poetry. And I went on in college, I studied English, and I went on to win some poetry slams. And I would literally sit on the floor on the stage with my hand over my head, reciting my poetry, because I was so full of dread of the stage. But it's that feeling that I have something to say, that like I want to say something, I want to express something. So that is what has led me to the stage. And as I said, comedy has been sort of the thing that has made me more confident on stage, because of this feeling of imperfection, of the power of imperfection.
Yes, we also have Ana Maria Dorgo in the room. Hello. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
Could you say a little bit about yourself for the people who don't know you?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Ana Maria. I am tuning in from Amsterdam, the Netherlands today. I'm a learning and community consultant. I do a lot of work in communities of practice. Specifically, I started a community of practice for learning and development professionals almost 5 years ago as something really small locally here in Amsterdam. It is today a big global community of practice, a beautiful space to be in. I'm a facilitator, learning experience designer, and I know Bern from LinkedIn and also from L&D Shakers and probably from a bunch of other communities that we both hang into. And we shared some thoughts around this idea of learning as a museum or learning in a museum, or what can we take from museums and apply to learning. And that's what brought me here. And I'm looking forward to the exploration.
I was thinking about the singer's voice. I don't know if that's an instrument, but because I really enjoy interacting with people, and I think usually it's the singer's voice that is interacting with audiences the most.
Would like to be the piano tune, but more of a subtle background, because I like to play the subtle background experience, just accompanying what is existing and going with the flow, basically aligning with what's been played as a background sound.
Yeah, I'm glad you chose me because I also chose the piano. So that's a nice transition. And I chose the piano because it's a very versatile instrument. It's an everyday instrument that everyone are familiar with, but it can be fun, it can be amusing, it can be light, and it also can be classical and pro and serious.
Yes, wonderful. And who would you like to give?
Victor, my friend Victoria.
Victoria. Beautiful.
Thank you, Cindy. And actually, I was listening to everyone and I was thinking there are so many nice words that were said. And I decided I was trying to find this quotation, but I haven't found it yet. But this is a quotation of Winnie the Pooh, whom I believe you all know and like. And he used to say that what I like to do best is doing nothing. It's when people call on you and ask you, what are you going to do? And you answer, oh, nothing. And then you go and you do it. And doing nothing means just going alone, listening to all the things that you can't hear and do not bother.
Thank you, Victoria. Fantastic. I wouldn't.
Yeah. I will go to.
Would anybody have expected from Victoria a Winnie the Pooh quote?
Why not?
So you had a totally different idea of the museum. So you created the Learning Museum and you shared this in a session at the LXD conference a few weeks ago, I think. And so what was your idea about the Learning Museum?
Yes, it was on the opposite side of the scale, because I think your take, and you were not the only one to tell me that, is that when I think about museum, I think about dusty old things that are exposed for us to go back in time and look at. And when I think about museum, I think about a space where I am most inspired and most triggered to action, and where I take a lot of ideas. And my favorite museums are interactive museums where you get to go and touch things and push buttons, and the room and the lights and everything that happens reacts to you, and your body scanned, and you're being told what emotions you're feeling, and all of those tech-powered experiences that we have. And so for me, this idea of a learning museum came after spending a lot of time in museum. It's my happy place. And as I can spend there mostly alone time for hours, I saw that I'm not alone. And I saw a lot of youngsters, a lot of people that usually we like to say, oh, the new generations, they're not engaged, they don't learn, they cannot sit still. And somehow there they are spending hours within a museum, looking around and debating and discussing and so on. And I'm like, why is that? What is it about museums that capture our attention so that we can spend hours exploring? And why isn't learning within our organization looking more like that?
Yes, I just wanted to mention something because some years ago I was working on curriculum of museums, and we have to be aware that we have, each museum has its curriculum. In fact, each museum has two curriculums, one which we see and another which we called in the education hidden curriculum.
Yeah.
And both of them, they are extremely important. So here, when you are mentioning that, there is a creativity in the museum because you can change the rooms. Well, you can change the rooms just for the space which was prepared with some specific objective that you go here or there. So we should have this in mind. And it is not always that we learn what we want to learn, but we learn also what someone else wants us to learn.
I was thinking about being a violin because of its high-pitched sound and because of my desire to get to the heart of people.
What I find very useful is that you shared some of the techniques with us that worked for you, how to overcome this, because I think bravery is not having no fear. It's basically being able to overcome fears and barriers and obstacles we have or we build for ourselves. How did you deal with stage fright? So how do you manage, or still today, how do you manage to be up there and be funny?
Well, it's because comedy builds communication skills. Comedy builds confidence, it builds bravery, self-awareness, agility. Confidence is this ability to respond without a script, without fear of failure, and to be open, to be able to process difficulties, to assemble reality and reassemble reality. So comedy is power.
I wanted to share with you a definition of rituals that I found here in the Oxford English Dictionary: a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. Before we start, could you write your own definition of ritual in the chat? Continuity and remembrance. Beautiful. And Barbara, ritual is using the senses, the spirit, and the physical world in a ceremony to elicit transformation, collaboration, or celebration, or all of the above. I think, Barbara, you're the winner here in this little contest. And I think you know a thing or two about rituals. I mentioned this in the previous ceremony, but actually I got married by Barbara back in October. But I got married to myself. And so Barbara also, among many other things, celebrates a Marry Yourself ceremony. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So artistically, so I'm a performance artist and an interfaith minister, and I use existing rituals and existing parts of everyday life in order to create experiences where people are seen, heard, and celebrated. And Marry Yourself came out of, I was a legal wedding officiant for over 10 years, and I officiated 560 legal weddings, including some of the first same-sex marriages in New York State, which was very exciting. So one of the things that seems to keep happening is that whatever I'm doing professionally, I start to turn it into performance art on the side.
And the fourth person I invited today is Karina. So Karina, I met you a couple of weeks ago in Lille at the Theatre Congress. And you came to probably the craziest session I've ever led at any Congress or in life, where I was dressed up as a pirate. And you're a psychologist. And tell us a little bit about your work.
So I just went to each session just by the description of it, and the fact that it was something theatrical just got my attention, and the fact that all the session was developed with that immersive kind of experience really got me to then reach out to Bernd in the one-to-one moment and know more about him, about what he does, and understanding all these experiential experiences that you guys create sometimes when it comes to learning and developing training and so on. And I ended up realizing that most probably I haven't given that name because I didn't have the vocabulary, but as a psychologist, I actually recreate experiences in therapy. the experience that we create in therapy is just a place where each person can develop all these different personalities, all these different roles that they have, and they try to readjust to what is needed in each moment.
Yeah, thank you. So look at all this richness. Look at the invitation. The invitation is, what would you marry? If you could marry yourself, how small, how succinct is this invitation? And look at all of the richness that is tumbling out. And this is what happens just about every time.
Yeah.
I'm
really curious what Alex would marry.
That's who I was going to ask next. We're right on time. Alex, it is clearly your turn because you were on my list too.
I am very intensively thinking about it because, I mean, as you guys were talking, I even cried a couple of times. I don't know, oh, but I have like this, how to say, like dual split that I don't understand. On one side, it is of course more about, I mean, I would want to marry kind of peace in me, you know, inner peace. But on the other side, I feel that sometimes it's being kind of misused. So because, you know, I'm a bearded guy from Siberia with 2 tattoos on his shoulders. So like people don't always perceive me very safe.
And as Bern knows, my real name is an instrument of music, so it would be difficult to choose a different one, but my original birth name is Kalimba.
I would choose as my musical instrument the conductor's baton because I don't make any sound at all, but I can help other people make their sound and come together as a group.
Now, Cindy, you are our conductor. You are also an orchestra conductor in real life. And how is this for an orchestra? So today you have an orchestra here in the room with a trumpet, a cello, 2 pianos, a violin, let's say 1 guitar and 1 flute, a tin whistle, Tibetan bells, and a bass. How is that?
I love this exercise because it really gives a very quick snapshot of your personalities. And it's a very quick insight into who you are and how you like to present yourself and be a part of what's going on around you. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, beautiful. So we're here because we have a theme. Every time we run these sessions, we have a theme, and this time is a word that's actually a French word, ensemble. And in French, it just means together. But in music, it has a specific meaning. So, Cindy, can you fill us in? What is an ensemble in music compared to a team or a group?
Sure. A musician would never use the word team because we don't work in teams. We work in ensembles, like Bern said. The way the similar is that a team and an ensemble, they're both groups of people. And they also have this in common, is that everybody kind of has a role to play within the group. And from that point, there's a big divergence between the two. A team is exclusive and an ensemble is inclusive. For example, if a team, you have teams at work, there are sports teams or armies. These are fixed groups. And for example, you only belong to one. If you're on a sports team, you belong to one team, you don't belong to different teams. And ensembles are fluid. In a team, since you belong to one, then there's an inherent gap. You have yours and I have mine. And with ensembles, there's an inherent collaboration of us belonging and that we're equals. The team also connotates competition. In ensemble, there is no competition, there's only winners. And the last big difference I would like to explain about teams and ensembles is that a team will have a coach. In other words, it has somebody more important telling you how to run the play, how to do this, how to do what you should be doing, how to move forward. Ensembles have no coaches. You coach yourself.
Well, hello, good evening, good night, good morning, I don't know. As a huge fan of improv theater, I usually like to take some phrases about improv. And this one just catches my mind because it really means a lot to me. So in improv, every yes and is a choice to keep the conversation alive. So is every days of our lives. So everything is a choice. Either you are a yes and person or a yes but person.
I'd
Right.
like to share something too that Donica said, which was the importance of both preparation and freedom. The more prepared you are, the freer you are. And I thought that was a really good point. He was talking about a class that he designed or a course that he designed for actors and a module. And that rung true with me, that preparation and freedom go together.
Yeah. Yes. Have you ever had, I mean, many of us work in training or learning or in education, that's why you came, or as coaches. Have you ever had the experience that you've prepared something meticulously and then you suddenly start improvising, or you have to actually leave the script behind and do something else, right? But I think what you just said, what you just shared with us, maybe Donica, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we also need that preparation to be able to say, okay, yeah, but there is also a better way, right? So if you don't have that preparation, it's probably harder to improvise. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Again, this is an acting module, so it's very particular, but I suppose it comes from the idea that a lot of people approaching acting have the idea that it's all about instinct, and instinct is, to quote Falstaff, a great matter. And it's very important and hugely, I mean, it's hugely important. However, the module in a way is about drawing people's attention to the function of the preparation, the function of the research, and what that does. And I call it kind of that the instinct needs to be fed, you know. The instinct has to be fed and prepared, and it needs to be readied. And if it is readied, then you can be free. Your instinct can then lead.
I have one question about the role of a conductor in classical orchestra. So where does the conductor come in there? What's the role of a conductor in relation to an ensemble? So I suppose a classical orchestra, very often it's the same people who work together, and then they may change conductors, right? A new conductor may come in here and there. So what's the role of a conductor in your opinion? Because I suppose there are many different styles.
Right. Conductors have different ideas about what it is they're supposed to do. In my opinion, the leadership of a conductor is a momentary invitation to collaborate.
So basically, I would like you to discuss this in your random teams. What would you like to add to the Museum of Obsolescence? So what are the things related to learning, to school, to education, to corporate training, and so on, even learning in organizations, thinking of Alain's work, that should be in the Museum of Obsolescence. So yes, that also brings us to this post here, which is expecting everybody to learn the same. I think this is a very important post here as well. So we take neurodiversity into account. Everyone learns differently, creativity, community learning, try different methodologies. There is no way of learning that suits everybody, right? So there has to be a bit of variety. Now, is this a dream or is this something that can be put into practice? And what do we need? Also on the side of institutions, schools, universities, teachers, and so on. Is that a dream or is it possible?
There is no easy answer to that one, but that's a year of lots of clever people sitting around trying to work it all out.
Yeah.
It's a huge dilemma, and it's all about getting buy-in from the right people, and that's not something you are going to be able to find an answer to in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Yes, Veronica.
Well, I think part of it, I think actually you wrote about it not too long ago, was a drive to make the learning experience, quote, satisfying. And I think satisfying equating to always comfortable and not too difficult. And I think if our I think part of the institutional trend to go towards student satisfaction, that means just what I meant for it to be very limited in nature. I think we need for the institutions to maybe put checks on that process, because I think it can have also a negative effect. I think there are very good things about wanting to involve students, wanting to implicate the students in the learning process, as well as attempting to really get buy-in from the students and get responses and feedback from students. But I think sometimes it flips almost too far. And then we get to making sure the students are always happy, making sure the parents are always happy. and that kind of institutional dependence on a simplified version of satisfaction, I think, might be something that institutions should maybe think upon that and reflect upon that, and the effect of those types of processes and policies that are put in place.
But I would be curious to see if anybody actually created one. Did anybody create a new one you would like to share, or at least the beginning?
Absolutely. I think Cindy and I did.
Wonderful.
So it's a new take on the funeral. I don't know how we did up there, but we circled around this idea that a lot of people mention they want to be present at their own goodbye.
Yeah.
To have that gift. And then I was sharing the It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite films. I ritualistically watch it around the holidays because I love the gift, and the message of that film is to what a gift to see your impact on the world. So Cindy and I were playing around with this idea of being present to hear from those people, and then being able to know when you do depart this plane of existence that you leave with that peace and knowledge and idea that you have touched so many people. So then we put it into ChatGPT to figure out like what we would call it. But this idea of eternal echoes or echoes of life, so that you put something out into the world and you're getting it back in a version. Then we played around with the world like resonant, but to create a ceremony. And again, this implies that you kind of know something is coming, or maybe there's an age like 65 that this happens. And you go forward however long you get to go forward with this knowledge. And then kind of in a twofold, when you do depart, there's more of a peace and a celebration of life because you've given that person the gift and the send off. And that when you have to depart this plane, that it's with a peace of and a sense of a value as a human, that you've had those connections. So that's what we played around with. And of course it came up with 20 seconds to leave. We were like, no, we're just getting
We need more time. We need more time. Yeah, Devin really liked eternal echoes, and I like eternal resonance. And it's just a tiny difference. And that echoes is you coming back what you gave out, and resonance is coming back with everybody's interpretation of what you gave out. So I think either one of these rituals, I think, would work really well.
So I count on the two of you to connect and to create that ritual for the real world. I'd like to share these 10 bits from the book with you. So the first one would be the School of Shame and Punishment, which was pointed out in some of your posts as well. So that includes putting people on the spot, telling people off for failing instead of encouraging them to learn from mistakes, but then also just bad grades. So There are 10 statements here on the left and 10 statements on the right. For each coupling, can you decide if you in life rather tend towards the black box on the left or the green box on the right? And then give it a point, and then see how many points you have on the left and on the right. You don't have to share your result. And if you're right in the middle somewhere, that's possible too. Then give yourself half a point for each.
I agree with everything. Great.
So Alex, you're fully green.
No, I'm like fully black and green. I don't deny anything of them. You know, they all present.
That's beautiful. And we're going to deal with burgers and DNA. So as the burgers will be served at the end, so Florence asked, normally I would have said ladies first, but she asked me if she could go second. So we will start with DNA. And I prepared a couple of things for you. And so we're going to focus on DNA. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions, and I don't want an answer. So this is private. Nobody will be asked to share. Just for yourself, think about your journey so far. Think about your life journey. Think about your professional journey. Think about things that happened to you in the last couple of years. So, or a couple of months or a couple of days. And there are 3 questions. First question, do you have what you need? The second question, do you have what you desired? And the third question, do you have what you aspired for in your life? Now, nobody will share. That will be a bit private, I think. But what I would like to know from you, the answers to these 3 questions, were they similar or different? Yeah, I will explain it in a minute, but how did the others understand the difference? So what did, no, not what did you put for desire, but what is the difference for you between desire and aspirations? The next one here is the One Chance Learning School. So what I mean by this is, well, in the book, I think I have the example of a teacher who says, well, I've said this before, why don't you remember it? Learning is actually about revisiting things. It's about, it's a circle. It's an iterative process. It's a spiral, and it's not a line.
So I took aspire for to mean a goal, a life goal, and desire is more of a heart or passion feeling for me.
The next one is schools as prisons. Basically the idea of being in a room and having to sit down for a whole day. So that's probably also where your body engagement comes in, Karina, right? So being able to do things and not just sit down and listen. Schools as prisons, the school of short-term memory. So learning for exams and then later on, just emptying the brain because nobody can remember everything. So what can we actually learn things that really stick? And it's usually not what we learn for exams. School of selection, right? So either good or bad, and not catering for different forms of ability, neurodiversity, and so on. School of standardization, everybody gets the same. The school of exclusion, where certain people who have lots of talents don't get a chance. The school of the single perspective, you mentioned it. The school of knowledge, so school where we focus on knowledge and not skills. In French, they have these wonderful terms of savoir, savoir-faire, so knowing how to do things, but then also savoir-être, knowing how to be someone. And I think this is becoming more and more important as well, especially for young learners. And the last one, the end of learning. So once you finish school, you stop learning, which is, of course, totally wrong. I probably started learning when I left school.
Suppose needs would go under goods.
Yep, exactly. And what's the next?
And services.
Yeah, and services.
Oh,
yeah.
services.
Yep.
Aspiration under probably transformation.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, this would be
yeah.
Right? So needs. So if you only ask people for their needs, basically the only thing you can come up with is a service. And actually, it's probably thanks to Barbara and the wedding we talked about at the beginning that everything is kind of deep today. Or is it this time of the year? Thank you very much, Devin and Cindy. How about Alex, Barbara, and Karim?
Yeah, we shared a few stories from our perspectives, and I shared this story about the flight as a portal between the like airplane flight as a portal between different worlds. And Karim at the same time shared the story of, you know, independence and I guess building your own rituals, if I may say. And we, with help of Barbara, put this two together into kind of the ritual of exiting the matrix for a while, you know, a vacation outside of the matrix, be that the matrix of your own life or be that the matrix of the life that surrounds you, of actually stepping out into the world of independence and reconnection and rebuilding your own rituals.
Okay, so I think we took the assignment as how we would reinvent an existing ritual, and Dorcas was talking about Christmas and how she would like to reinvent it because she's not a big fan of what it is now. I take like commercialized and lots of food and lots of stress and stuff, and she shared that she would like to include more cultures and make it more meaningful. With that, we also had a discussion like what meaning Christmas would have for different cultures, and if we go from the origin of Christmas and celebrate it as a religious holiday, it's celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ, or still have a broader meaning of Christmas. But then we also switched to a discussion that there are some traditions that many people follow, which are difficult to change, but we can change rituals or create rituals within those traditions, and we have more freedom with that.
Because of my
my multicultural and highly mobile upbringing, I always kind of carry with me this kind of different perception, right, of what she was describing seemed to be a very monocultural, kind of very static way of celebrating Christmas, where when you're highly mobile, it was like, well, sometimes it's not that you couldn't have, like you didn't, like that if you didn't want to have a Christmas tree, you could have the choice. You had no choice. There were no trees. So it was out of the question. So you had to adapt and to have a different kind of holidays because of the places where you were. So my understanding of, and I love the way that Aliona was presenting the difference between rituals and traditions, right? And I was saying a tradition is something that you implement in your life as something that you want to do again. This is a tradition, but the tradition doesn't necessarily go with Christmas, like attached to the Bible. It can be anything. Like, is a tradition that every time that I don't know, grandpa comes at home, we first sit in the living and read a book.
Wouldn't be good. So what I propose, it's I'm just gonna share real quick what is the burger about. And after, what we would like to do, and we thought it was a great idea with Bernd, it's to that you go into your breakout rooms again and you build together your burgers. Thank you so much, Alex, for your comment. It's fascinating and so interesting. Indeed, what happened about the burger metaphor, it's really how we can build our identity. And we mentioned it with in my own breakout room, is like, what do we need to put a burger on? So we can start with the plate. And this plate, it's called the kintsugi. I don't know if you heard about this. It's a Japanese philosophy, and it comes from the Japanese philosophy. So the kintsugi is in our Western culture. When we break something, we just throw them, right? As in the more Asian countries, when you break something, and moreover, more specifically in Japan, they will stick it all together again, and they will stick it with glue and golden glue to make it stronger. Okay, so this has an impact, because this is also how we can feel that whatever happens in our lives, we can always take a beautiful outcome and become stronger after that. By gluing with golden lacquer all of those different pieces, we can actually start to create our own burger. So what is important, it's exactly what we just mentioned, and that's why those conversation are so insightful. It's really how we can answer our needs, how we can build our cultural intelligence, how we can develop our mindset, because when we have to look on ourselves, it's so important to see which mindset we can have. We know the difference between fixed mindset, growth mindset, and I think as people who actually transmit our knowledge and in the field of learning, having a global mindset today, it's so important, because we are teaching to many different nationalities, so everyone comes with their own point of view. So how you as a person, you can really develop this mindset.
And so I was, in my wedding life, I was doing costume weddings and helicopter weddings. I was basically serving this creative group of people who, in their ritual of marriage ceremony, needed to express their creativity to feel authentic. And I think this circle is a particularly interesting circle in which to talk about this, because people would come to me sometimes and they would say, "We're getting married, what do we do?" And I would say, "This is not the question. I mean, or I'm not the officiant for you, if that is the question. The question, if I'm the officiant for you, is, we're getting married, who are we?"
I don't mind trying to make sense of mine. So I ended up putting in the prompt manually.
Yeah.
And I realized the first time I did not ask it please. So this time I said, "Please design a burger where the bread represents Florida. The protein is life as a neurodivergent person who loves games. The cheese is a need to have peace and quiet. The vegetables are a belief in justice and love. The seasoning is light. It's wanting. The condiments are a wish to connect globally." And this is what it gave me.
It's great. It's amazing.
It's interesting.
It's really interesting.
Similar eye color. I'll give it that.
Right. So we just have time for an improvised ritual. So for this, we need a star. So I made this star, but there's also another star at the back. Right. Wonderful.
Yes.
A piece of paper would be enough. And let's say one side represents the year, the outgoing year 2024. And the other side, the flip side, the new year. So Barbara and I are going to improvise this, and we will prompt you with things you could write on your star about the outgoing year.
Yes.
And Barbara, would you like to give the first prompt?
Yeah. So choose which side is the outgoing year and which side is the new year. That's the first thing to do. And on the outgoing side, it's because the star's not very big, so we're really writing these things in 2 or 3 words. One thing that is staying in the past, one thing that we're letting go, one thing that we're letting go into the darkness of the past. That's the first thing. Something that will not cross the line into the new year. And the second thing to write on that side is what will? What is coming with you into 2025? Specifically from last year. And if you answered it a little differently than that, that's okay. So on the one side, on the 2024 side is one thing that's for sure staying in 24, not coming forward. Something to let go. And then something from this year that absolutely is coming forward. And this goes back to the post office project also that we were discussing before.
Yeah, that's right.
The letter to let go, the letter to receive. And we're doing it in a couple of words, but it's the same spirit.
Can I add
And
to
then,
this? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I add to this? I mean, this could be probably what you put down for letting go. But in terms of learning, I think we can only learn if we unlearn first. So in 2024, have you had any doubts about knowledge, existing beliefs, something that you have been totally positive, confirmed about, and now you think it's time to let go, to maybe open up and challenge this idea or this position? And if there is anything like that, maybe you could write it down also on the side of 2024. So what would you like to unlearn? Or at least challenge? Shall we flip the star?
Yeah.
Okay, other side.
Yep.
So, Barbara, what would you put on the other side for 2025?
So we've reflected on some things we want to let go and leave in the past. We've reflected on some things from the journey we're currently on that we definitely want to keep living into. And now on the 2025 side is to bring in the things that haven't happened yet, the things, the directions we want to go that are new, that will be discoveries. What do we want to discover? Where do we want to go? That will take us in some of those new expanded directions into the light.
Hey, I would like to add on to this in terms of learning. I mean, many of us have objectives, resolutions, and so on. I wouldn't go into any of that today. But is there an area where you think you would like to learn something which is not on your to-do list, but that could inspire you to open up, to lighten up, as Carolyn said, to perhaps also challenge something that you wanted to unlearn, something that is not on the list yet, but an area where you would like to explore and learn more?
The very end, I asked if we had followed the instructions, because often in breakout rooms we have great conversations. And
I married the rebel in me, so forget instructions. If I were an instrument, I would be the bass, because in a band, the bass doesn't play a lead instrument. So I would like my learners to play the lead instrument, but I would like to lay some kind of foundation and give the whole thing a little bit of structure. I definitely have to create my own burger now. But first I have a real one. I think one of the things about growth mindsets is also the kind of environment we learn things in. And a lot of people walk around with traumas from school or other places where you had to learn things. And very often people perform in order not to mess up. So I don't know if anybody had piano lessons when you were 10 or something. And yes, was that a good experience, Cindy, or a bad experience?
Oh, I hated it.
Yeah.
Hated it. I was too busy chasing puppies and butterflies and kittens, and to sit on a piano bench and play the piano. Give me a break. No. But later on in life, I learned how to play the piano, so I made up for it.
Yeah. And then also, I think a lot of piano teachers, classic style piano teachers, old school piano teachers, they look for mistakes and they interrupt and they say, play that again. No, you can do better than this, and so on. Instead of praising, even for mistakes people make, or for maybe a beautiful expression in the music somebody used, or something positive, right? So we look for the negative rather than positive. Ginny, we had a conversation about this with friends a couple of weeks ago, and we realized that in France, actually, we don't really have a culture around us that is very much into complimenting people or giving positive feedback. So it's very often about negative feedback, unfortunately. And the best thing you can get from a teacher in a French school is il n'y a rien à dire. I can't criticize it. You know, there's nothing.
I have nothing to say. Nothing
to say about it. So it's as if you are in a theater and you perform, and all you can expect is that the audience won't boo. They won't clap, but if they won't boo, you go home happy. That's terrible, isn't it? That's terrible. That's a very negative culture. So I would like
Is
to.
it terrible? I would like to challenge if I may.
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
I mean, obviously, I mean, you know, we don't have to go into the whole debate about, you know, what is actually considered a good enough versus yeah, where do we strive for, right? In terms of mastery. And I think it's, again, it's a very Eurocentric or maybe even Western centric and maybe even Anglo-Saxon centric way of thinking about having to have the praise and having to do great and being kind of, you know, positively reinforced.
Yeah.
Where clearly in you know, a lot of cultures that's not the case. I mean, I experienced that in the Netherlands as well, where you have even the kind of as a phenomenon of zestculture, which is kind of you aiming, you know, for 6 between 1 and 10, and you're actually discouraged quietly from doing better than the average, because then
Wow.
you going past like you standing out, like what it's too much, right? Do normal is kind of the expectation, the social expectation of where you're supposed to land, right? And so it's all great, but and that's I guess where my but comes, is that it's contextual and cultural, and I think especially in a learning scenario or in the context in which people are accustomed to very different learning styles, the kind of overly positive reinforcement can actually be yeah, mismatched.
Exactly. Overly positive is not good either, but true feedback, meaningful feedback, and compliments. That's great. It's good for the
Yeah,
dopamine.
everyone likes that.
Anybody else who would like to share? Nobody is obliged to share. This can be just between you and the stars.
I don't want to marry anything. No, I don't want to marry. Nothing, no idea. I just want to disconnect during those 3 weeks, because the idea to marry myself or to marry with is like before marrying, I need to break, to disrupt something, because I feel that world is going wrong. With all what we have, we are still looking for solutions.
You know, like Bern, you just said about unlearning, and it's like an aha moment. Yes, this is what I need to do. And I relate it to my experience. Like, to me, it's like limitations that I have. And I realize I am often the person who gives other people a different perspective as an intercultural trainer. But I'm lacking sometimes somebody who could give me a different perspective. I realize that, okay, I see a different perspective when I listen to people, but when I'm in my world, oftentimes I'm so rigid. I'm like, you know, like I'm right, and this is what I need to do. And I need somebody to tell me, oh, well, that's not the only way to do things.